welcome. I'm Kurt Andersen. This is Sarah Heyward. And now Sarah will speak for now. We're going to try to have a conversation about this whole question of television and is it getting better or worse? She writes for the fantastic program Girls, which is one of the symptoms of the golden age of television in which we now exist and have for approximately 14 years. I've written for television, we both are writers, so we thought we'd have a conversation about writing, and most specifically for television and what we watch and what somebody of her generation watches and was influenced by. I have a theory, not a theory, like a take on the history of television. You know, I grew up in a time, as some of you did, when there were 3.5, 4 channels, and I personally just spent my entire childhood in front of television, watching television all the time, undiscriminating. Whatever was the best thing on at that moment, I watched. And you know, so my view is that from when I started watching television in 1960 until the 1990s, it was mostly, not terrible, but mostly just this sea of mediocrity. I don't know, the vast wasteland was the phrase that Newton Minow used to describe television. I don't know about wasteland compared to some grand idea of what television could do or should do, I guess, but to me it was just mediocre, and then occasionally very, very good. Since Sarah has been watching television and been sentient, what, 15 years? 18 years? Something like that. To me, there's vastly more of both. There's vastly more mediocrity. But what there is also is this best of times, worst of times thing, which is there's all this strange stuff that if people want to think television is getting worse, Honey Boo Boo, say, or exactly, or Toddlers and Tiara, which I watch because I think it's a great documentary series and I love it. But you know, certainly if you have the idea that no, it's getting worse, television is terrible, it's just that there's more extreme stuff. So you know, rather than this kind of mediocre and occasionally Mary Tyler Moore appears. But what we've had, what the golden age of television is there's also great stuff. It seems to me, great stuff that got me to start watching television again around, you know, in small ways during the 90s, and then in serious appointment television ways starting in 1999. And so I watch TV. But I still, I guess, discriminate, and I have a feeling from our conversations we had online before when we were half-assedly trying to figure out what we were going to talk about today. You sort of don't judge.
No, I definitely don't judge. I don't believe there's such a thing as a guilty pleasure. Like, all my pleasures are completely non-guilty. And I watch a huge range of what, like, the average person, from what they would consider terrible TV, like a Honey Boo Boo type of show, up to what is pretty universally considered good TV, like Mad Men, Breaking Bad, The Wire, that kind of show. So
the shows that I think are great and that constitute the golden age of television, Breaking Bad, The Wire, Girls, Sopranos, Deadwood, you watch as well.
Definitely, and I love them, and I recognize why they're good, but I still think the stuff on the bottom end of the spectrum is also good. And
like what? What's your favorite of the vast wasteland things that people point to as being, oh my God, the best that you think, this is great?
Well, it depends on the category. Like, in the description of this talk, Real Housewives was name-checked, and I definitely watch Real Housewives, and I don't feel bad about watching Real Housewives, and I don't think it's so terrible. I think it's actually, like you were saying, Toddler and Tiara is a documentary. That's how I feel about Real Housewives. It's something that we wouldn't have access to. People can complain all they want, but like, that is, you couldn't script something as Real Housewives is. But then all day today, I feel like I've been talking about this. I watch a lot of ABC Family, which is geared toward like,
what's on ABC?
Tween girl. It's like tween girl shows. So Pretty Little Liars is one of them, but the one that I actually really think doesn't get enough attention is the show Switched at Birth, which truly is written for 12-year-olds, but I think everyone should be watching it.
And I've never seen the show, but I saw the creator of it interviewed in which she talks about it very earnestly as trying to be this helpful, pro-social, people with differences to be accepted.
It's groundbreaking. One of the main characters is deaf. Half of the scenes are in sign language with subtitles. You cannot be looking at your phone while you're watching the show because you'll miss half of it. So that alone to me is a step forward, because otherwise I'm always looking at my phone or computer while I'm watching something. Almost always.
Really? And communicating with friends and the world about what you're watching?
Sometimes, or just, it depends on the show. For shows, honestly, for the like upper echelon of like Mad Men, Breaking Bad, I'm paying attention and I'm riveted. But for everything in between, including just sitcoms that I love and respect, it's not indicative of me not liking them. I just might pull out my phone and like, you know, to send a text to someone and then get caught up in my emails and realize I have to like rewind because I've missed a few minutes, or not rewind and just miss a few jokes.
And which is a new way of watching television. And I guess, so when it's one of the metastasizing Housewives of wherever shows. And by the way, why haven't they done Housewives of Aspen?
Oh, maybe it's coming up. Ski bunnies.
Tell me. They have?
I think they
Oh,
did
really?
try.
You refused? What? Yeah. So when you watch the Housewives shows, trashy shows that you guiltlessly watch and are not your guilty pleasures, but just your pleasures, is that because being 28?
It's my birthday, I'm 29 today.
Happy birthday! You're practically old.
I know.
Because you were hardwired with a kind of sense of irony that that you bring that to bear, and so you don't have to go, oh, this is trashy, but I'm going to watch it. It's just, it's that lack of judging thing.
Yeah,
that is a generational thing.
Irony. Like,
yeah.
'cause it's pretty earnest. I do like it, and I'll talk about the women on the show in a very serious way. Like, I think that if you can get past your gut reaction of like, oh, it's trashy reality TV, depending on the show, you know, different ones will appeal to different people, but I can relate to parts of it, and I can have interesting discussions about what happens on the show, even if the women aren't being interesting themselves necessarily.
No, and those shows, even though I don't like them, they do, in that documentary fashion, take you to worlds that we were not taken to before.
Definitely.
As you know, when Jerry Springer back in the 90s became this big thing, again I go, oh, and I heard it in the audience. But it's just that with a million channels, with hundreds of channels, rocks are turned over, to coin a phrase, and ungenerously, that were never turned over before. And we're seeing stuff, we don't have to watch it.
Yeah, and we're seeing all different kinds of people represented on television, which is something that gets complained about all the time. That, you know, we were talking about this in a panel last night about, you know, whether it's just the middle class being depicted on television, and reality TV is changing that. Like, for better or worse, there's going to be, it's really everything from Honey Boo Boo up to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, all walks of life.
Yeah. Which is the common theme, it seems to me, as I was thinking about this, and I'd never thought of this before, at the great shows as well. I mean, we get to see a depiction of a mafia family. Whoever saw that? We get to see a depiction of a high school chemistry teacher making meth and dealing with that in this seemingly highly realistic way that documentary could never do. And so, or we get to see a bunch of girls living in Brooklyn and having sex in unattractive ways.
Yes.
So, how did you get to girls? Because you weren't just, you know, knocking around LA trying to get, you know, being the assistant in the
I did a little knocking around LA, just a little. I was a fiction writer. I went to grad school for fiction at Iowa, and then I had a year in LA where I was a personal assistant. So, you know, doing hard labor in someone's house, and then
somebody famous.
Nicole Hollisoner. She's
she's a
writer-director. She's great. So I was working for her, and then basically I left that job to be an assistant on the pilot of Girls. So I was an assistant while they were filming the pilot, and at that point they read my writing, and once the show got picked up, they hired me.
So talk about that. Is it what you knew, what you expected, what you read about? I mean, you didn't grow up in the boondocks. Your father's a big television news executive.
Yeah, but still, it was like, getting this job, it was like a crash course. I mean, I really didn't know anything about, I barely knew the difference, I mean, it's all very Hollywoody, but I barely knew like agent, manager, how does a writer's room work, like all of that stuff, and I definitely learned that really quickly. It was also really cool because Lena's basically my age, she's a couple years younger than me, and she too didn't have any experience.
She's younger than you, that's true.
She is, she's 2 years younger
That's
than me,
funny.
exactly. And we were kind of learning it together.
By Lena, we mean Lena Dunham.
Lena Dunham, the creator of Girls, yes.
And so, do you feel as though, okay, you're an assistant, here's some stuff I've written, and that's what, prose fiction?
In this case, it was a short story, so that was unusual. Normally, you would give them a screenwriting sample, but it happened to be a story about sex and girls, so I think that really worked well for me when it came to what they were hoping the show would be about.
And was there a model? Because when it started, I remember people said, well, Harley Quinn, it's on HBO and it's about young women in New York. People said, oh, is this some subverted version of Sex and the City?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we all love Sex and the City.
Really?
We do. I will stand by Sex and the City. I think it was groundbreaking. There were no women on television talking about sex the way the women on Sex and the City were. Girls could not exist if Sex and the City hadn't existed. The primary difference is Sex and the City was an aspirational show.
Right.
Girls is, supposed to be much more grounded in reality. So that makes a huge difference, but we talk about Sex and the City all the time, and there's a surprising amount of overlap. Like, we'll want to do a storyline, I'm the Sex and the City expert, and I'll be like,
really?
We can't
you
do
don't
that.
like the movies, right?
No, I mean, I've watched them, but
the second Sex and the City movie is one of the worst movies ever.
No comment,
Okay,
yes. I don't want to say anything bad about Sex and the City, but yes.
So you grew up, so that show was on when you were...
I was in high school.
So
I wasn't really allowed to watch it.
Really?
I was like, sort of.
Too dirty?
It was just like, it was on late and like, it wasn't encouraged. But then I started watching it maybe like halfway through, and then I was addicted and caught up. And I have seen every episode many, many times.
And so that, and Lena Dunham was also...
She would have, yeah, and she would have been like a middle school and high schooler when it was on.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's frequently, because just because we're writing about women in New York, inevitably there's going to be overlap either in the emotional stories or in just like someone's running a marathon, like that type of thing.
Right. And so, and what were the other shows that were, I have children who are slightly younger than you, who were total friends.
Oh yeah.
Created people, and they've seen every episode multiple times and still talk about life.
Yeah.
As though, oh, that reminds me of the episode where Rachel does
totally.
such and such.
I'm like that with friends. Seinfeld for me was my show, like my family. We were all obsessed with Seinfeld. That is one. I know every piece of trivia, every line of every episode. My boyfriend and I just watched the entire series from start to finish one a night, and we went through the whole thing.
That's like 150 episodes.
Whatever it is. It was amazing to watch it as an adult because I still found the same things funny, but I also related very differently to like just details of dating life and what was, different dynamics among like the grown-ups that when I was 6 or 7 watching it, I clearly didn't understand.
So do you feel like Girls it sounds as though you feel as though Girls is part of the history of television, because it's also been talked about as, oh no, this is independent cinema being brought to television.
I think it looks like independent cinema. Like,
Yeah.
I think Girls is shot beautifully and looks very much like a movie, but to me it fits right into the trajectory of television and where television is going.
I've written for television, but never, and I've written novels and written fiction, I've never really experienced that writer's room thing. Talk about that. That has always struck me as you'd have to be temperamentally suited to writing that way.
Yeah. Definitely, it's a collaborative effort. It's really, really different from writing fiction or a movie by yourself. You have to compromise. Everything's getting like workshopped all the way through. People are.
But somebody writes a draft.
Yeah, definitely. We brainstorm everything. So we start out with very broad ideas about the whole season. Then we have more specific ideas about what we want each episode to look like. Then we break those down into scenes for each episode. We have an outline. Someone goes and writes that draft, bring it in, we tear it apart, and then they go and write another version of it until it turns out the way Lena or everyone else wants it.
And how brutal is the collaborative process?
I think in our writer's room, not particularly brutal, because we're all, Lena and Jenny Connor, our executive producer, lead like a very warm and friendly room. We all are encouraged to say how we're feeling. It's very emotional, it's very therapeutic, But I think some writers' rooms are incredibly brutal, and you know, I'm not going to say no one's ever cried in our writers' room.
Yeah, and it's not. I was happy to discover when my not young male friend Paul Sims joined your staff. But it surprised me that he did, because I imagined it. Oh, it's all these 28-year-old girls.
Not at all.
There were men before Paul.
Oh yeah, no. Lena and I all along have been the only ones in our 20s. And everyone else I'd say is like 36 or above, and most in their 40s.
And are there discussions of, oh no, a woman in her 20s would never do that? Or, come on, Grandpa, or are those kinds of things?
Only for being really mean, but no, it actually is surprisingly, everyone is good at writing for the show and everyone brings a different experience to it. I think they really chose a good group of writers in that sense. Lena has such a voice that is, you know, the unifying force of the show, that she might say, like, this isn't how I see it for my version or in my world, but it's not usually like us being like, our generation wouldn't do that, you know. Everyone's very savvy, and also we're trying to write a show that appeals to everyone in a certain sense, so we don't want it to just be like,
well, especially since 27-year-olds in Brooklyn, judging by the ones I know, don't subscribe to HBO or have television.
Oh yeah, they all steal it. Everyone I know who watches it illegally.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And do you say that to your masters at HBO?
No.
They know.
They don't need it, yeah, it's okay.
We talked a little bit about being spoiled. I don't mean going to a private school in Manhattan, and I don't even know that you did, and you grew up in the suburbs, actually.
Yeah.
But I mean spoiled by this being your first serious television job, this show by somebody your age about people like you for HBO. For instance, does HBO give you the classically idiotic notes that, for instance,
not at all. No, we all feel incredibly spoiled. I don't know what, I can't believe it's my first job, because we barely get any notes from HBO, and the notes that they give us are great. It's like 1 or 2 notes per episode, and it's something that we all usually agree with that needed work.
Really?
Yeah, HBO is incredibly supportive. I mean, we wouldn't be able to get away with the things that we put on television if it wasn't HBO.
Right. And
everyone is aware that we have a very symbiotic relationship with them.
Well, it is interesting. I mean, there are good shows on broadcast networks, and there have been amazing shows on broadcast networks the last 20 years. But when we talk about, my God, television is getting better to the degree it is, it's all about cable.
Yeah, for the most part, I think. I mean, there's a trickle down. Like, I do think that some network shows are, also slowly catching up and getting better. I think that just in terms of
Mindy Kaling show.
That's what I was going to bring up, because I feel like some of the same changes that
Mindy Kaling show, the Mindy Project.
The Mindy Project, the same way that it was very shocking for some people to see Lena as the lead of a show, it's just as groundbreaking and amazing to see Mindy as the lead of a show.
Non-skinny women.
Non-skinny, Mindy's a person of color, she's addressing that constantly in the show, and it's, it's a topic and it's very open, it's not taboo, and it's a popular show, that's incredible. Also, just frankly, the amount of women, I mean, everyone was talking a year or two ago, all these shows came out with girls in the title, or about
New Girl,
New Girl, Two Broke Girls, those all came out around
and some of those
time.
are terrible.
Yeah, but honestly, even whether they're terrible or good doesn't even matter to me, because it's amazing that women are creating them and starring in them, and that the shows are sustaining. That is so cool.
One of the things, I mean, it's not mysterious why, I mean, HBO has a certain level of quality, and that's part of their brand, and that's why they get people to subscribe. But the fact that you only have to write, how many episodes a year?
It was 10 the first 2, and now 12.
I mean, compared to 22 or more
I know.
on the network?
Well, that's the other thing, is network TV is it's a lot crazier. They have to pack everything in, and they're working incredibly hard, and they have way, way less time to shoot. We have this long, luxurious schedule where we can write for months.
Right.
We can all be on set together, and we can take 2 weeks to shoot an episode, which is very long.
Really? It takes 2 weeks to shoot an
Some
episode?
shows take 1 evening, and we can take 2 weeks. So it's really amazing.
Well, and if you're a cable network, like HBO, like Showtime, like AMC, you don't have this burden of having to program every night for 3 hours, right?
Exactly.
I mean, so it's, and given that now network audiences, which were once 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, 50 million people, are not that much bigger, and in some cases the same size as cable audiences, you would think that there would be more of a trickle down in the culture, the creative culture of those shows and the developing of those shows than there's been. To me, it's as if networks still believe they're programming for audiences, for everybody, for audiences of 10 and 20 and 30 million people. And that's why they haven't figured out how to make great shows, which they're capable. I mean, it's the same pool of writers.
Yeah,
and creators.
definitely. It's a lot harder. It's a lot about, you know, if you're writing for a network show, you're dealing with a lot of people who aren't writers giving you notes on how to create the show. So it's a lot of trying to appeal to everyone, exactly like you said. I just think we're also in this transition stage for TV where there's a chance it's just not even, this format is like not going to exist the way that it does now in our lifetimes easily. Like the fact that internet shows, web series, Netflix, what they're doing, like all of that is taking away from the network audience.
Right. So do you, I mean, as this show's not going to last forever.
No.
So as you see, I mean, do you plan on having a career in television?
I'm not sure. I mean, Girls is really special, and I would love to write movies. I'd love to write books. If there were another special TV show like Girls that appealed to me in that way, of course, I would love to write for it. But like you said, I'm spoiled about it now, and I can't really imagine writing for a show where you're being told you like can't make a certain joke or that, you know, someone has to dress a certain way. It sounds very constricting.
So do you have enough fortitude and enough money saved that in 2015 you won't just take the hack TV writing job?
Let's hope so, but I can't say that I definitely won't. I have no idea.
Yeah. When you went to Iowa, the great prestigious fiction writing master's program, did you actually get an MFA?
Yeah.
Did you came out and thinking, okay, now I'm going to write stories and novels, or yeah, it was nice, I'm going to go now write and be in television?
I definitely wanted to write stories and novels, and many of my peers have successfully published their books. They are novelists and poets living in the world and surviving in that way. But I had a teacher at Iowa who thought I would be good at screenwriting.
Really?
And yeah,
that's allowed to be said?
it's not allowed to be said, but he was a visiting professor, and he was a screenwriter.
Ooh, and he corrupted you.
And he totally corrupted me. So I got in my head, I started reading scripts, I wanted to move to LA, and it just sort of happened from there. The thing at Iowa is they don't even acknowledge that screenwriting exists. Like they're like, there's no way to make money as a writer. You can hope to be extremely successful or be a teacher. And like no one talks about
So the
that.
monastic idea is still totally...
Yes, very much so. So that was kind of, I felt like guilty and weird, like I was like giving up on this art to like go sell out, something like that. But then I got to LA and just jumped right in.
And do your prose writing, are they just entirely envious of you, or
no, not at all. I mean, they're all doing great. I think I'm envious of them. Like I would love to be publishing my book right now. I just don't even have time. I don't even know like where I would begin to write fiction again.
What else should we talk about?
I want to know what TV shows are your guilty pleasures or not guilty pleasures.
Well, certainly. I mean, I never liked that phrase either, because if you're going to watch it, watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say, you know, it isn't, The Wire, but Toddlers and Tiara suddenly.
Did you actually watch it?
I have not seen most of them, but I've seen probably a third or half of them. And it sickens me, but it sickens me the way a great documentary about some horrible world. I mean, not a war, but...
Or like what goes in our food or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I find it absolutely fascinating. And even, I watched an episode that I hadn't seen recently, and it was, I don't know if you know Toddlers and Tiara, it's about this world where little girls dress up in super, it's the JonBenet Ramsey world of girls.
And Honey Boo Boo's a spinoff.
Of beauty contests for little girls. And there was one, I guess it's more than one, but where it's being judged by transvestites. Where I thought, man, oh man, I thought this was all about middle American pathology. And I thought, maybe this is great.
It kind of is.
So that's one. That would qualify as the guilty pleasure. But For me, the middle stuff, the good-ish television broadcast networks, I just have no interest in whatsoever.
So you don't watch any of like the sitcoms that people are
like
New Girl, Mindy.
I kind of like. I watch
Modern
New Girl.
Family.
I like that. It's fine. I watch Modern Family and New Girl. I mean, I don't watch them.
Right.
I have watched them and think, fine, but I don't feel obliged to keep watching them like I do your show, for instance.
Do you miss the days of like sitting down to watch, having to pre-DVR, you know, pre-internet viewing, where like everyone would be talking about the next day what they watched the night before?
I mean, there was a pleasure in that. In the did you see MASH last night? But do I miss that as a? I don't think that's a huge. I mean, no, I don't. Personally, I think there's some loss in that, but I think there's probably as much as a society to be gained by the greatness of a Deadwood or a Wire or a Breaking Bad. If that's the choice, that we don't all watch MASH and talk about it the next day at work, and we get to watch actually unbelievably great stuff that of a kind that didn't exist before, I'll take that.
Right, and what about having the option to watch everything all in a row instead of having to wait? Like the new Arrested Development, when it came out, got a lot of...
Yeah, and I was never a big Arrested Development person, so I didn't binge on that. But the idea of being able to watch, for an entire couple of seasons of The Wire in one summer, to me, because they are as good as novels, they are the modern Dickens or whatever. Being able to binge and watch those in a row is better. In fact, I don't like when I watch a show like Mad Men or something, having to wait a week.
I know, but sometimes shows are designed so that you should have to wait a week.
Yeah. Do you feel like that? Is Girls designed?
No, I don't think Girls is designed like that.
I watch it once a week. I have not watched that.
The Girls episodes are short, and I think, you could watch a bunch in a row and it would be okay. But I do think there's a certain fatigue from binging too hard, and I think Arrested Development suffered from this in the way that they came out with all their episodes at once.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my other thoughts on the new Arrested Developments, but I do think
that is not as good as
but I do think that was one of the problems, and I also think because of the nature of the internet and the way we're all, texting, tweeting, recaps go up about a TV show, it's so nearly impossible if you're a connected person to avoid spoilers.
I know.
It gets very stressful. You have to watch the show.
And I thought like a few months, there was a statute of limitations that you could start talking about this stuff. No. I tweeted about something that had happened in I forget even what show, maybe Downton Abbey, weeks or months later, and somebody said, "Oh, way to spoil it." Really?
Exactly.
But what other than the Housewives of TK, what other bad shows or what other high quality premium shows do you?
And other than those kid-like shows that I watch.
Yes, those.
And all the sitcoms. I also watch a lot of Top Chef type of reality shows.
I watch those.
I'm in a Survivor fantasy league. It's much like a football fantasy league.
I didn't know that.
But it's for the show Survivor.
Really?
Yeah.
So you and people get together and pretend you're on
we don't pretend we're on it. We're making bets on who's going to.
Oh, sort of like that.
Yeah.
You have your own team.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's very competitive. And again, with the internet, it's actually a huge problem because if you seek it out, you can get spoilers even before it airs. You can find some website that tells you who's going to win who's going to come close to winning. So, but yeah, that's another one that I watch that I'm mildly embarrassed about, more because people are shocked that it's still on the air every time I say it.
What about you? Do you have nostalgia for the time before you were born, where I wish I lived in the 70s?
I don't have nostalgia for that necessarily. I have intense nostalgia for my own childhood shows. And I write about them all the time. I write essays on the internet about missing shows of the 80s and 90s. I can get into a YouTube hole where I'm watching theme songs from shows that were on for 6 months on the Disney Channel in 1991, and I will be transfixed. And you have access to all of it. It was it actually took away this phenomenon that I was sort of obsessed with growing up. Where you'd have a shadowy memory of one scene from a show that and you were did that exist?
Pre-DVR,
how can I find out this thing from when I was little? I can now, and anyone who uses Google long enough can find anything that I remember and prove it existed and probably watch an episode of it on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. In a way, it's really satisfying. And in another way, I sort of like that hazy, like forgotten show thing.
Yeah, 100%. So the answer to the question posed by this thing is television getting better or worse?
I think.
What's your not one word answer,
right.
But your answer?
Exactly as you said at the start. I think both the ends of it's two extremes, and it's certainly, at least in part, just by nature of the fact that there's so many channels and so many outlets at this point, between the internet and like the fact that there's 1,000 channels on our TVs, and so many more scripted shows on other networks now. It's not, it's not limited.
Here's a fact that one of the people who are my agents said to me that just still astounds me. He said it a month ago. There are 43 buyers of scripted television. 43 buyers.
Yeah.
Now that means a lot of. That covers a lot of territory, but still,
it's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, definitely, and it's increasing every day. I mean, like I keep hearing about, who would have thought that like Spike TV? There's all these stations that you just wouldn't think would have had scripted TV that now are starting to. So because of that, I think there's room for really good shows and there's room for really bad shows, and we're having more of both.
Yeah, but what about you're as I said, your father has been in television, had a career in television news. If we limit the question to that, I think you have to say worse.
For television news?
Yeah.
News is changing completely. I mean, I literally get my news half the time from Twitter. Like, I feel like I know things that happen before they are announced because of Twitter.
Yeah.
And
well, you do. Have you ever, do you watch TV news?
No.
Have you ever?
Only growing up because of my dad, a little. But I would only watch TV news now if it was some like salacious, story I'd been following, and I like wanted to see Diane Sawyer interview Amanda Knox.
Right. Has she yet?
It was amazing. Yeah. You need to watch it. She's innocent, by the way.
Yeah. You could kind of play Amanda. You look kind of Amanda Knox.
That's the biggest compliment you could possibly give me. I'm obsessed with her. So thank you.
On that
classy note.
On that classy note. Yeah, your Amanda Knox simulacrum quality. We will open this to questions from the audience if there are any. Yes, sir, in the blue.
Fast forward.
Wait for the microphone.
Sure. First of all, I love the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have to fast forward to a more globalized production environment, say television spin-offs from Bollywood and Brazil and Canal Plus in Paris, can you imagine, instead of Dallas playing with Italian subtitles, Italian sitcoms coming to the US and being blockbusters? Or do you think that'll never happen, that something from the emerging markets or Europe will totally break through?
That's a really interesting question, because it's already happening a little bit. Certainly reality television, Survivor and everything else, Big Brother, all that, were all British formats that became American.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it's happening probably more than most people realize. Just that we're taking a show that already has exists in another country, but not bringing it exactly and airing it on TV. We're doing our own American format. That's how we got The Office, of course.
Homeland is
Homeland, which is one of my favorite shows, and I'm interested to watch the original, but I don't necessarily. I think that's going to happen more and more. But I don't necessarily think we're gonna take the actual physical show and air it on American networks.
Downton Abbey.
Yeah, Downton is a huge success. I'm surprised they're not trying to do an American spin-off right now.
I'm trying to do a version, rip off a version. Yes, people in the blue, dark blue. Yes, I just because. Oh, okay, Mister.
No, I have a mic, but I don't need one.
Yes, you do. It's coming to you, and we'll vamp until it gets to you.
So for us people who are over 90, you mean there's...
You're not over 90.
Well, I'm 88, so I'm near that curve. So, close.
Close enough.
And I want to make a show called Over 90. So, do you think...
I'm surprised that hasn't been made.
Do you think we're never again going to have anything like the Ed Sullivan Show? We're never again going to have anything like 60 Minutes? Do you think that we're never going to have anything like the incredible one about the gentleman who just died? The Sopranos.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, all of us were addicted to those things.
Well,
So where will we get them? Where will we find them?
Well,
Not on
will we
Twitter.
ever have again? You've done a lot of different things. 60 Minutes. It is. I watch 60 Minutes actually. It is the one. It is. In fact, perhaps maybe. I mean, it is certainly the one great, the 20th century show, and one of the few network shows that I still actually watch because it's still really good.
Yeah.
And will that exist again on television?
Right, that's the key. On television, probably not. But it really, on the internet.
Yeah.
All TV is going to be on the internet.
Ed Sullivan, I mean, there will never be there will never be me at 8 watching the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. That won't exist again unless somebody is like, unless a crime is being committed, essentially.
Yeah, but there's certainly still sketch shows and variety shows.
Exactly.
I mean, those continue to be
Or
creative.
all the American Idol and music competition shows arguably are
Yeah,
Ed
and so
Sullivan
you can
shows.
dance. There's shows that are opening people up to, art forms that they wouldn't have otherwise experienced. That's a really good thing that we've gotten out of some of those types of reality competitions.
And Sopranos, I would argue that, yes, that was, started in 1999. It was fantastic, but The Wire,
To me, Homeland fits right in
Breaking
there with
Bad,
that.
Homeland, there are still, shows. We could argue all night long about what are the best, and is this as good as that? But I think that the Sopranos, 100%, absolutely.
Yeah, that will.
And when AMC, it's good shows. But I'm not as big a Mad Men fan as some people, but I watch it. But when they've proven that there's a business to be done with audiences of 2 or 3 million or less.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, girls
Your
is less,
case,
definitely.
Then that's great. But yeah, 60 Minutes. Yeah, I think we've seen the last of its kind. Trying to find women. There's a woman.
So what do you think of all this voice? Oh, sorry.
So what do you think of all this voice of a generation stuff? Do you identify with that? Do you think it's silly?
I guess that question's for you.
Yeah, that was a quote from the show. The character is saying that. It has been widely quoted as Lena saying it. It is Hannah saying it. I do think at this point, because the show has become such a phenomenon, Lena is a voice of her generation. I don't think she's the voice. I think she's a very loud voice that we're all listening to, which is great. I do think the show is doing things that no other show on television really has done for people in their 20s. We haven't seen this kind of depiction. We haven't seen this kind of honesty. And I think that's why it's caused so much controversy and why there's so much attention on Lena, because she is the one who created this. But I do think that quote, really, it's Hannah who said it, it's not Lena who said it.
But she sort of inured herself to it and invited this quote. But she was smart, and one of her many smart things to do that in the first episode.
Oh yeah, she has invited controversy also. She has invited controversy. I mean, she takes risks every single day, and she's dealing with the consequences, and the show continues, so I think it's good.
And for instance, the no black people living in Brooklyn.
Well, that wasn't an intentional risk, but yes, that definitely was a huge controversy, and there was a lot of criticism that there wasn't enough diversity on the show. We worked to address it in season 2. We continue to in season 3, and I think Lena I can't speak for her, but she had from what I've read and heard her say, a split reaction of, I was never claiming to write for everyone. This is my experience, and I'm writing just about one girl's experience. At the same time, we would be fools to say that there's only white people in Brooklyn, and we do now have an increasingly large platform, and it's important to address that and to make sure we're
So you created a conservative black man character.
Well, I think in that case
that doesn't exist, but go ahead.
It does sometimes. We care a lot about specifics and making the character specific. So I think to just throw in, we're avoiding stereotypes as much as we can. And trying to keep...
For instance, unlike Mad Men, which has done, by my lights, a terrible job incorporating black characters of color.
Yeah, I mean, they addressed it. They have they hired the black secretaries. Yeah. But it's interesting because they're also trying to depict history, so...
Yeah.
Oh, really? The multicolored shirt. Male multicolored shirt. No, it's,
I'm gonna get to the mic, trying to be professional. What is it that cable television isn't doing that it should be doing for you?
I mean, it has, I mean, talking about, there's interesting, trashy documentary of the toddlers and tiaras and housewives of Chattanooga, but it isn't doing unambiguously great nonfiction in the way that it's doing unambiguously great fiction. That's just inarguably true.
yeah. I also think, I mean, there is something to be said, like we were saying, people my age, a lot of people don't have HBO. There's something about the like having to pay for it to get to those good shows that isn't ideal. Right
And
now.
there's, you know, there's a lot of great things that it has yet to do, and maybe it will. I mean, you know, just as it's depicting, your show is depicting 27-year-olds with this unvarnished reality. You know, one of the, for instance, but this is just like a thing it hasn't gotten around to yet. It hasn't depicted people in their 50s with unvarnished, interesting reality. But that's just to show that it hasn't done yet, I think, not that it has failed to,
Yeah.
you know. Man. You, man.
I'm not
Oh, I think I'm wondering if it was you.
No, I know it's me. Two things. This is going to spoil my burgeoning relationship with Sarah, but Sex and the City was not the way women talk. It was the way gay guys talk. That's first of all. Second of all, I think to address the topic, there is a potential difference in the way shows are written now. In the golden days, as we used to call them, we did write individual scripts. Now you do have writers' rooms. There were no writers' rooms then, and that does make a difference.
That's interesting. We spoke before, and you wrote for Maritana Moore, right?
Right.
And so that was just, you wrote a script like you write a movie script and handed it in. And
No, you had your meeting, and Jim Brooks tomorrow will be here, and it was the best show to be on. I was lucky like you; it was my first show, so I identify with you. You go in, you pitch your ideas, you spend about with them a day pitching them back and forth. You go write your first draft. They give you notes, you go write your second draft. And then most people would leave. They would allow you to come to the table, work with the actors. And it was a real, you know, your own experience, which was very rare. But I do think that if you had the voice then, you felt that you had your own voice. Now, I don't know that I would want to work in that room, and I don't know how do you feel about writing your own script without a room?
I love the room, but I feel very lucky to be able to do both. The room is so much fun, like on a pure going to work level. It's extremely fun. I'm surrounded by really smart, funny people. I happen to like Lena's voice, and I like her personally. That makes it a lot easier. But certainly I come from a background of writing alone, and you know, there's a little bit of having to put that aside and be like, this isn't my show, and at the end of the day, I'm not making the decision. But we do get individual episodes, and you know, in those we can sort of like flex a little more and make sure there's more of our voice in there.
Sure. I guess what we should do is just pick on the person who's nearest
Yes.
to the mic.
Everyone associates bad television with reality shows, typically. And when, you know, every time you read the title of a lecture like this, everybody comments on reality shows. What do you think about the overpopulation of crime shows on television and the amount of gore and violence that we get through shows like The Killing and CSI and CIS, and I've only named about 2% of everything.
Or Walking Dead, which I confess to watching every episode.
So, what do you feel about the future of those shows in television and the growth of shows like yours that are based on character and personalities, and not so much about the nasty behind the scenes of society?
Well, I think it depends whether you're talking about like procedurals, specifically like Law and Order, which is different than a show like Walking Dead, or just like violence and gore. I think ideally there'd be a fusion at some point where whether it's a procedural or not, you're still also having like the heart and emotion and grounded characters of what we consider like better shows. I like Law and Order. I find something soothing about the procedural format, but I understand that it's not, you know, the dialogue isn't necessarily what's bringing me back every week.
And there's good and bad. I mean, House was a procedural. I liked House a lot, you know. So you know, in any, I mean, genre, there's good and bad.
Yeah, The Good Wife is sort of a procedural too. There's always like a case, and then there's the personal.
Do you think? I mean, is Good Wife? Is The Good Wife great?
I've only seen the first season. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But better than the average procedural. More character based than the average procedural, for sure.
But when that was an example of a show that people said, "Oh, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. This is great network television." And I watched a couple of episodes, and I thought, really, if that's as great as network can be, then I'm sticking with cable.
Yeah.
Sir. See, one attempts to go elsewhere because that seems fair, but then the microphone has to run to catch him.
So I realize the writing room is part of this difference, but I'm wondering, with some of these higher end shows like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, what have you, are there differences now between TV writing and movie writing? Is the TV writing becoming more like movie writing in these higher end shows? And then I guess the second part of the question is, has the writing in these higher end shows affected movie writers?
It's a good question. You know, I would say that there is more great writing in television now, and I would think that feature screenwriters would agree with this, than there is certainly in the top 50 grossing films of last year. I mean, there is still, as ever, fantastic, you know, indie film writing, but movies that, you know, 50,000 people see or 100,000 maybe people see.
Yeah, I think that TV writing has gotten so much better, and people take television more seriously. There used to be this sort of stigma where, you know, people who wrote movies, it was considered to be like maybe a higher form of writing than writing for TV. I don't think that exists as much anymore. Many people who used to write movies now have TV shows. You can look at something like New Girl, where, you know, the woman who created it, Liz Merriweather, you know, she got famous from writing a movie and then got her TV show, and I don't think she considers that a step down.
What do you think the fundamental difference is between writing for TV and writing for film? Like a high-end TV and writing for film, is it a visual thing? Is it mainly writing more visual for film?
Well, for me, the fundamental difference is a movie has a beginning and an end, and you're writing it, you know, all at once. It's like, for me, it's like writing a short story or something. Like, it's like I can see it, practically like hold it. But with TV, you don't necessarily, only in rare cases, do you like know when it's going to end ahead of time. So you have to be able to set up long lines of tension, short lines of tension. You have to have possibilities. You have to have, you know, characters that can reappear. There's like much less room for just the finality. For
Television writing at its best is more like writing novels.
Definitely.
You know, a 300 minutes of television is more like a novel than a 100-minute feature film. You know?
Can you critique some failures? Newsroom, William Hurt comes to mind.
William Hurt comes to mind because it's not broadcast news, you mean?
Yeah, just why Newsroom failed.
Yeah. But let's not blame it on...
Newsroom still exists.
Yeah, Newsroom still exists. But
yeah.
I'm with you.
I mean, it failed us maybe on like a like or dislike level.
It is the first show, not the first show, but the show that I have hate watched more than any other in history. I can't read back that point. What does that say?
About 10 minutes.
Oh, I thought it just said N. Oh, okay, 10 minutes. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, certainly to me, I mean, it has another season.
Yeah, another season's coming.
Who knows?
It's Aaron Sorkin. I think that when people get to a certain level of fame and success, you know, there's a lot less, for better or worse, of people, you know, reining them in. I don't know specifically like why so many people don't like Newsroom. I don't love Newsroom, but I do watch it. I like the atmosphere of it. But I don't think there's like a rhyme or reason necessarily. That show should have been good, definitely. And it could be, you know, a lack of critique from the people working on it. It could be the casting. It's
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a whole.
right.
I could spend the rest of the 10 minutes telling you why I think that's not a great show, or even a good.
Tell us.
Well, because one thing is it lashes together. I mean, the little romantic comedy stuff it does is like, why are you doing that? Why this inauthentic thing lashing to this other inauthentic thing of writing about cable television in cable news as it hasn't been for more than a decade.
Yeah, it doesn't have a very current feeling to it. And especially they said it originally 2 years in the past, so it was a lot of news stories we already knew how they turned out, and they were giving us a not very accurate depiction of, like, because clearly this is a fictional newsroom. They didn't break these stories. We know who wrote these stories. It's this weird dynamic.
Well, and a character like that anchor man, when did that last? What is that? Where is this, like 1980s, 90s kind of anchor man? Where if he kind of went a little off in a public setting, which is the premise of that show at the beginning, like who's that?
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Brokaw. I mean, what?
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It hasn't existed for a long time. So it's just not the way. It's not. If it's a period piece, as though it's supposed to be happening in 2013.
Yeah, maybe we all would have loved it if it took place in like 1992 or something.
Yeah. Man.
You can pick.
So for both of y'all, how much TV do y'all watch a week? How many hours? And then how many books do you read a week?
Great question. Eye-opening question. I watch way too much TV. I like to pretend it's because it's my job. It's not. I definitely watch probably 2 hours a night. But I love to read, and especially when I'm in New York, I read every day on the subway, whenever I can. But TV more, for sure, and it's not great. But I do think as a writer, you should be reading as much as possible, and you also should be watching. So it's just a balancing act, but definitely tons of TV.
I don't watch that. I watch only, not only. I watch overwhelmed. The TV I watch is not 2 hours a night, and it's, except if it's, catching up with, I only watch the good stuff. I do, except for the occasional Toddlers and Terror.
Right, I'm not flipping channels is the other thing. I am always like sitting down to watch a show, so that's something that's changed also. There's not that sort of like mindless, I think for most people, you're not just like flipping through and like hoping to find
as
something.
I did as a young person. No, I pretty much watch Colbert and Daily Show every night.
That's an hour right there.
That's an hour right there, exactly. But it's only 4 nights a week.
Oh.
And I read a lot of books. Some of those for work and many of those not. Yes.
Hi, Sarah. I just want to say thank you for challenging the premise of the conversation a little bit. I think the fact that we're talking about highbrow and lowbrow and kind of saying, well, we may not all agree on what is good and we may not all agree on what's bad, I think is very valuable. So that's a comment. The question is, and this actually comes from a little bit of the conversation that I heard you have earlier today. Just, talking about representing a specific point of view and how important that is too. This show is about, girls in Brooklyn, a certain class, a certain this, a certain that. And, a little bit of what I heard, and tell me if I'm incorrect about this, of Lena, when the kind of race conversation came up, saying, well, I'm not a person of color, therefore, I can't really represent that point of view. And yet, she's writing about men. She's writing about, people of various sexual orientations. She's writing about a lot of people who are other than herself. But race seems to be something that's kind of, beyond, bridging. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. And also, I love the Donald Glover thing. I thought that was fantastic.
Good, I'm glad. I can't speak for Lena. I think that she grew up a certain way, her friends are a certain way, and the show truly started out as a reflection of her own experiences and, what she had gone through with her friends and with men. So, that it is true, there's men on the show, she's not a man. But she is, when we're writing the men, a lot of it is based on like a boyfriend she had or, someone that she knew in real life. I think that it's hard because as I said earlier, we can't go back and like recast one of the 4 main girls. The best we can do right now is just like try to enrich the world, make it a more diverse setting, make the new characters that we bring in every opportunity to like make it a more realistic depiction. And it's something we talk about all the time. And certainly a good writer should be able to write different experiences. It's just that she feels her best writing is about her own experiences. And that's just, that's how it works for her.
And that's what, as you say, the show was invented to be about writing what she knows.
Definitely, it's grown.
I guess we have time for one more question. That's perhaps what that sign says.
Orange.
You, orange.
Thank you. First, thank you for spending your birthday with us. I was wondering if you could speak a bit about the process of honing your screenwriting skills, since screenwriting was not your initial inclination, and what shows or scripts you sort of turn to study or as models of great TV writing.
Yeah, definitely. I want to hear yours too, because you weren't a screenwriter. It was terrifying. I felt like such a baby. I felt like I'd been like studying something for 15 years and suddenly was having to do something brand new. I read a lot of scripts. That's something everyone will tell you to do if you want to be a screenwriter. You can get them online for free. Some you can buy them if you need to, but really most of them are available online. And then when I started Girls, they actually gave us like a reading list of books, not just scripts, and stuff to watch. So Mary Tyler Moore was, a big influence for us. This movie Girlfriends, that's sort of like a lesser known movie directed by this woman, Claudia Weil. You can order it on Amazon in this sort of weird way. They'll like make a DVD for you because it hasn't really been released. So movies like that and books about, women in New York. There's a whole list I can give you if you want. But in terms of, I also just took classes. I sort of was like, I need to learn this. My boyfriend's a screenwriter. He helps me all the time. Being willing to just like find teachers around you and being willing to share your work with them and just like consuming as much as you can of work that you respect. That's what helped me. And I'm still learning completely. Like I don't feel like I've mastered screenwriting in any way, but just diving right in really, really helped. But you had to.
No, I will say, the one thing about the differences between writing prose fiction, novels, stories, and screenwriting, I wrote my first paid screenplay, that I'd sold to Hollywood while I was in the middle of writing my first novel. It was, as it happened, accidentally, I stopped this book for several months to write this screenplay. It made that novel a lot better because of the economy that screenwriting, which is the biggest difference, I guess, between this fiction I write and in general, between prose fiction. Screenwriting is the sheer economy of it.
Yes.
It helped me write fiction better to have that experience in the middle. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah, to lose the crutch of being able to write a description and have to just do it in dialogue, that's an incredible thing to have to learn.
Yeah. I think we're done. So thanks to all of you a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.